I picked up this script early in my life that if you want to be happy, you're going to get there through success. And if you want to be successful, work hard, give it your best, right? And that's what I did. And 20 years later, I was, really doing well financially. I had a lovely wife. I had a wonderful son. So I was doing all the things that I had picked up that at the end of it should lie the pot of gold, the gold of happiness, right? And my reality couldn't be different. Every morning, I was waking up with deep anxiety in the morning. I would wake up rolled up in a ball. Why am I so stressed? Why am I so anxious? Because there was nothing going on externally that was causing a trouble, right? It was all internal.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about the science of happiness. I'm delighted to welcome Ashish Kothari. Ashish is a transformational leader, the founder and CEO of Happiness Squad, the host of the Happiness Squad podcast, and author of the Amazon #1 bestseller, Hardwired for Happiness. You can reach Ashish at his website, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Ashish. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Linda, to be in conversation with you and just share some of my journey and what we are finding with your listeners.
And we have a similar mission because I am also all about bringing happiness. Let's bring it to the people because I imagine that, like myself, you have also struggled with happiness in the past. We have a tendency to assume I will be happy when, and then you can fill in the blank. I will be happy when I have this career or this much success or maybe this much money in the bank, or I'm in this kind of house, or I'm driving this kind of car, or I'm this particular size, or whatever your fill in the blank is. And then people, they give their all to get those things so that they can be happy. And they're so surprised and disappointed when it doesn't work that way. So is it okay if we start with your story and then let's find out where it really is? If it's not that, where is it?
That is a great question, right? Happy to share. I'll tell you a little bit about my story. And it is actually just a wonderful coincidence and a good coincidence that I actually didn't start my journey, Linda, searching for happiness. Because we know from the science, those who pursue happiness are actually unhappier.
Oh, okay. So don't go there.
If your goal is to be happy and you say, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, what happens? We're so focused on ourselves. Am I happy right now? Am I happy right now? What's not going my way, right? And the science is clear. Most people who focus on happiness are unhappier because of a focus on self versus those who focus on, living a virtuous life, doing work that provides meaning, serving others, taking care of our health. So there's a set of practices that I wrote about that can help us be happier. Now, as I said, I wasn't luckily searching for happiness. So what was I searching for? How did the book Hardwired for Happiness come around? And what I was searching for, Linda, was actually what keeps us stuck in fear and anxiety. You see, I was born in India. I in 23 came to the US. I was born in a middle class family. And like many, actually, whether it's in the US or India or anywhere else, I picked up the script early in my life that if you want to be happy, you're going to get there through success. And if you want to be successful, work hard, give it your best, right? And that's what I did. And it really served me well. I mean, I had come to this country. I'm a true American, they say the story of like anybody can make it. I came to the US at 23 with $5,000 in my bank, in my pocket, actually. And that was a loan. I had to pay that back. And I had come here working for IBM. And 20 years later, I had found myself, I was a partner at McKinsey. I was, really doing well financially. I had a lovely wife. I had a wonderful son. We lived in Boulder, Colorado. My clients, I was driving lots of impact for them. So I was doing all the things that I had picked up that at the end of it should lie the pot of gold, the gold of happiness, right? And my reality couldn't be different. Every morning, around at the age of 42, 43, 44, I was waking up with deep anxiety in the morning. I would wake up rolled up in a ball. And the worst was I didn't know why. Why am I so stressed? Why am I so anxious? Because there was nothing going on externally that was causing a trouble, right? It was all internal. And there were so many well wishers who said, it's okay. It comes with these high demanding jobs. Let me give you the name of my therapist, wonderful person. Or somebody else said, let me give you the number of my doctor, and you can just take an anti-anxiety pill, and we all go through these, and it's okay. And that wasn't an answer that I was okay with. I was not willing to numb myself or talk through a problem that I didn't really think existed. And so I said, you know what? Studying hard and really doing the research is what's helped me get here. Let me do that. And that's what took me on my journey, Linda, across spiritual wisdom traditions, across research in psychology, neurosciences, philosophy. I read 450 different books. I trained as a coach. I was searching for what keeps us. Why am I not flourishing? Why am I stuck in this fear? What's causing this anxiety? And from that work emerged the original title of the book that I wrote, which I wrote in the pandemic. The title of the book was From Fear to Freedom, a journey from within to live your best life, which we then changed to Hardwired for Happiness. But really that in that conundrum, right, in that title is the answer. We are born happy, okay? We are born happy as babies, as young kids. We are happy. We are mindful. You don't need to tell a kid, right, who's young to be present with the toys and play forever. Unless a baby is hungry, thirsty, falls down, wet diaper, their base state is smile and giggling and happiness. But as adults, we lose that. We start chasing happiness. And the rest of the state, we are busy, stressed, anxious, whatever you call it. But nobody says, hey, how are you? I'm awesome. And I'm busy. And what gets in the way is we discover that I have a self, I have a body, and our brains, which have evolved over millions of years, come into play. They start to become our sense-making instrument. And those brains are hardwired for fear. They're not wired to keep us happy. They're wired to keep us safe. Millions of years of evolution. It's those that have helped us get to the top of the food chain, even though we're not the strongest or the largest, because they're good at spotting danger, right? And that was my discovery. That was my insight. And these practices then became the natural ways through which we can rewire our brain away from kind of the brain state that was really good for 20,000 years ago, but is completely maladapted to the world we live in.
Isn't that interesting? So as I'm listening and I'm trying to pick up little pieces about what worked, what didn't work. And so you're just, I'm here and I'm going to be successful. I'm going to do this. And I know the process to do this. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to study and I'm going to make it happen. And you had the skills and you had the drive and you did it. And you were able to get and accomplish all those things that you wanted. And then to say, when I'm there, I don't feel this happiness and joy and satisfaction and fulfillment that I thought I would. I loved how you described it as this pot of gold. No, I feel like I want to curl up in a ball. There's something not right. And it was interesting, as you said, I don't want to talk to somebody about a problem I don't think I have. So I'd love to go back to that statement now that you took your skill set, which is I've got the drive, I'm smart, I know how to study, I don't want to numb myself, I want to figure this out. So you studied and read, and not only did you read 450 books and more, also 2,000 plus hours of listening to lectures. Teach me, help me to be able to gather what I need to know. So now that you've gone through all of that research, do you still feel like I, I don't have a problem? I don't want to talk about a problem that I don't have.
Yeah, I had a problem. But the problem was not something that I would have found an answer outside.
Mm.
The problem at the heart of it, when I pointed it out after all of the work, and by the way, I was reading and I was learning, but I was also experimenting. I'd made myself into a research lab. I always say you can research, and just because it works for you and for 1,000 others, you also have to practice in order to do research. You have to see if it works for you, right? It has to work for you. By the way, research is something I picked up from Tao, who's also a very amazing happiness researcher. I loved it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to use that word research.
Oh, I love
But
it.
I'll tell you what was missing, Linda. There was a core element, which is, the work that I did externally was highly impactful, right? So I was serving my clients in particular, for example, on one of the areas where I spent a lot of my time was I was helping them negotiate better deals with suppliers, helping them save pennies on the, pennies and cents on the dollar. Real meaningful impact, right? Really, really big impact for these companies. I don't even negotiate a car. I've never had that relationship with money. So here I was spending 8, 10, 12 hours doing something because it made somebody help successful, right? And that brought you joy. But most of the time that I was doing that work, it wasn't personally connected to what I'm good at or what I love. So think about how many people, your listeners who are listening, you go to work and you work because it's a way to earn a paycheck. But beyond that, it doesn't have elements of what you love. You might even hate it, but you're like, yeah, hey, it's just a job. I find meaning outside work. Why? Work is what we do the majority of time. Other than sleeping, there is no other activity that actually occupies more time. How can we be happier out there if we are miserable in our jobs? Or work is just a way to survive. If we want to thrive, we have to shift it. The work I'm doing now, Linda, through the work that I did, through some retreats, through the journey within, through discovering within. By the way, that's what I mean. Nobody externally can give you that answer because it requires you to tune inward to say, hey, what is it that I love? What is my strengths? And how can I use those to make a positive impact in the world in a way that also earns me a paycheck? And that's what I'm doing now. And I think it was being able to bridge that for me that made a big difference, in addition to the other practices I defined that over time literally rewired my brain. Literally rewired my brain. It changed the lenses through which I was seeing the world. Completely changed it.
I love that. I love every part of it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to one line that I read previously and you alluded to, and it was you turned yourself into a living laboratory. And I loved that. And then I also loved the addition of the me search. So you did research and you did me search.
Yes.
When you take research and turn it into me search, that means you have to apply it.
That's it.
And I think change comes from when we learn and apply. And until we make that, then we just learn and it
That's
doesn't do anything. So the thing that sounds like was missing, that a key element, in addition to all of the maybe theories, but the application is what I'm doing with my time, with my talents, with what I'm doing to earn a living. Is it in harmony with me?
with
Does it
who I am.
resonate?
Exactly.
My happiness, my talents, my skill set, is this a good match? And if it is, that's awesome. And if it isn't, it can cause some dissatisfaction.
Yes, absolutely. Right. That is critical. And in fact, I would build one more element because we integrate that into the work I'm doing now with organizations. So you learn it, right? I use this word. We are drowning right now, Linda. If you think about how much we have, we are drowning in knowledge. We are parched for practice. We have no time to
Ooh, will you
practice.
repeat that? I like that.
We are drowning in knowledge, but we are parched for practice. How many self-help books come out? How many podcasts come out? How many YouTubes come out? People listen. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Do we practice? Nothing. Because we're so busy going from the start of the day till the end of the day, ending up collapsed and repeating that cycle. We don't practice. But if we are able to bridge that gap, which is what we are trying to do with Happiness Squad, magic happens. And so there are 3 steps towards bridging that gap, going from knowing to doing to being. 3 steps. Step
Yes,
number
please.
1, read. And read all the different perspectives, not just one perspective, right? And knowing is important. But from knowing, when you practice, you cross the chasm of believing versus experiencing. That's the research, right? I can believe that this is good for me, or I can try it. Try it, try it. Does it work for me? Yes, it's working. Okay, I'm going to stick with it. But then, once you've applied it and it works for you, don't stop. Teach it, share it with others. Because when we teach and share with others, our insight goes deeper. People ask questions, we reflect further. And so knowing to doing to being requires us to practice and then teach.
That is so simple. And yet it is challenging. As you mentioned, people feel like they don't have time. It's like, oh my gosh, Ashish, that sounds nice, but I don't have any time.
Yeah.
So, how, if I feel overwhelmed, like I don't have time to add one more thing into my day, is there something small that you can
Yes.
suggest that I can do to get started?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I've spent 25 years, Linda, and driving at scale transformations at clients. 1,000 people, right? In my last client engagement, we took the company from negative 10 million on a billion base to plus 60 million in 18 months. That only happens when you change 1,000 people, how they show up, they work, they execute. And I was like, look, we know how to do it. So why not apply it to this, this topic of flourishing? So we built a program, we built an offering that is called Rewire. Rewire, what we did was we said, look, knowing to doing, how do we cross that gap? We are habit driven, and most of what we do every day is habit based. And I'll give you a simple example of how habits form and how they harm us. 25 years ago, Linda, if you and I were going to stand, let's say, in a queue at a theme park, right? Or at a grocery store, or even just getting into an elevator, we would not see this. I'm holding a phone, right? Everybody looking at their phones. 25 years ago, we would have looked around. But we have made it a habit where there are even 15 seconds of a gap or 30 seconds, we look at our phones. So that's a habit. It's a habit that's not serving us. There are many other such habits that we have created. In effect, we have made unhappiness a habit. So I said, well, what if we actually help people build happier habits? So how do we do that? So what do we know from the science of habit formation? All the amazing work done by BJ Fogg and James Clear and Charles Duhigg and so many others. They say start small, anchor to things you already do, and celebrate. So this is what we did. In Rewire, I took the 9 practices that were in my book, and we basically broke them down into 32 5-minute micro practices. So every micro practice is 5 minutes or less. The second thing we did, and the reason there are 32 is so you can choose. Do your own research to find which work for you. The second is we tied all of them, Linda, all of them, to what you do already at work. So you don't have to add something new. You can just change how you do what you already do. And then the third is we said, you know what else makes us stick to habits? Let's say I made a New Year resolution just to myself. The chances are I'm not going to keep it. If I commit to you, Linda, to say, hey, Linda, check in with me. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a run at least once a week. Chances are you'll follow up with me and I'll also stick up with it. And then eventually, whether I stick with it or not doesn't, things, but higher chances that I stick with it. But if I took it one step further, Linda, and I said, hey, Linda, why don't you and I meet once a week at the park and we go for a run together? Now I actually have higher chance, even more than the second, to show up because now I'm letting you down.
Mm.
I'm just not letting me down and losing face. I'm letting you down. So the third element we built in is we actually do these journeys in cohorts of 20 if we are working directly with individuals or in whole teams, where as a team, they do it together. They practice together. They check into each other as part of their weekly meetings. So we're putting all of the things. They're small. They're 5-minute things. They are tied to what you do, and you do it together. And I'll give you an example of a really simple one.
Yes, please.
Really, really simple. Mindfulness. We know from all the research on brain science, if you go more than 2 hours without a break, our stress level starts to accumulate, our focus drops, right? And our literally decision-making quality goes down. And yet at work, we are in back-to-back meetings. Most people are. We have no time to meditate because we're so busy. So people say, hey, I don't meditate. So we started introducing this one practice that so many of my clients now have integrated. Many of their meetings, they start with 1 mindful minute. One of the people would say, hey, listen, let's start with 6 mindful breaths, just 6. We're going to breathe in consciously, following the air, filling our bellies and our lungs, and we're going to breathe out. We don't need to chant. We don't need to do anything else, but we're just going to close our eyes and take 6 breaths. And it's an invitation for people to bring their minds to where their bodies already are, because the bodies have no choice but to be in the present moment. Our minds can be anywhere. They can be in the past, they can be in the future. In fact, in our research, most people for the first 10 minutes of the meeting are still thinking about the old meeting. They're not even here. And so what is the benefit of that, right? If you have 4 or 5 meetings where you've integrated a mindful minute, one, you've created natural breakers to keep your stress from accumulating. Second, you've created an opportunity to regulate emotionally, allow your parasympathetic system to catch up, to be in a better emotional state, to be able to hear each other. And you are present. So in addition to actually being healthier for us, right? They actually reduce stress, we become more productive because we can have better dialogues. We are not triggered. We are not anxious. And so this is an example of a practice, a micro practice. It's 1 minute. We all have a minute. We just do it multiple times. And if we do it, we start to bring that energy of mindfulness in our day-to-day lives, rather than just that 5 minutes on the mat in the morning.
Wow. Okay. That was packed with information, so much so that I want to go back and kind of elaborate on it. There are a few things you said that I had never pondered before, and that is to bring the mind to where the body is. The body has no choice but to be in the present, but our mind can be anywhere. So as we breathe, it puts our mind back into our body.
Yes.
And that made a mental image for me. Like, here I am, and my mind is off somewhere. And I know my mind goes off somewhere, but I never thought of it as not being in my body in those moments when my mind is thinking about the past or the future. Or like you said, you can be in a meeting and I could be thinking about the meeting we just had. Or let's say I'm presenting in the next meeting. The whole time I'm in that meeting, I could be thinking about what am I going to say? Exactly.
Yeah.
So in your meeting then, are you having these people as a group say, okay, as part of our meeting, we're all just going to take 6 breaths? Is that kind of how you're implementing this into a group situation?
Exactly. So we are implementing it in, so one client of mine that did something even more. So they twice a day ring a bell And that's the invitation for everybody for a minute to just stop and be. Stop doing and just be. Give yourself a 1 minute mental cleanse. So whatever they're doing, it's an invitation, right? It's not a demand, it's an invitation to just stop what you're doing for a minute, close your eyes, and just take 5 or 6 cleansing breaths. Breathe in, knowing that you're breathing in, and breathe out. And then for many of their key meetings, they'll start with what they call a mindful minute. Now, look, this is a practice that exists in another industry. It's not mindful minute, but we can learn from it. So my inspiration for this, Linda, actually came from the oil and gas industry. In oil and gas industry, most meetings start with what they call a safety moment. You can have 8 meetings in a day, and every meeting starts with, this is where you go in case of a hurricane. This is where you go in case of a fire. Here's the emergency exit. Everybody knows it. Because, zero deaths, zero accidents is something that the industry prides themselves on. Because, an accident in an oil rig is not just one life. It's a lot of lives and a lot of financial assets. So they have zero tolerance. So they have safety moments. My invitation, friends, is the following. Most of the work we do today is cognitive work. Oil and gas protects their asset with a safety moment. Why don't we protect our mental assets? All the work we do is cognitive through mindful moments, mindful minutes as part of almost every meeting.
Wow, that's a beautiful thought. And as you're talking about this safety moment, and one of the biggest problems you mentioned in the beginning is about fear. And many times we don't even recognize that that is the thing that we're feeling is a form of fear.
Yes.
And how our survival of the fittest, us as a species, here's why we are the top of the food chain, is because we are good at spotting danger. We're good at it. That's where we go. And so immediately, if it's not molded properly, it can easily lead to living in a life of fear because we're so good at pointing out and recognizing danger or potential danger, which I think is even makes it bigger.
Well, it is, Linda. And I mean, this is where research from Harvard, inspired my work, which is, if you look at this, so there's a whole field of complexity theory, right? It all kind of started with Dave Snowden and his work around the Cynefin model that then got picked up by Jennifer Garvey Berger and several others, Bob Keegan at Harvard, which they coined into adult development theory. And what they found was that if you look at the world we're living in right now, Linda, there is a fundamental mismatch between the complexity of the world and our own ability to hold it. Only 20% of the leaders in their research are at a level of adult development that is suited to meet the challenges of the times. So what happens when you have that mismatch? We constantly get triggered because when we face the mismatch, and we fail to get the situation under control despite our hardest attempts, what we experience is a form of psychological threat, a threat to our identity. I'm going to get fired. I can't control it. I am not good enough. I am not worthy. And that's what so many, in fact, that was my kind of impetus to leave the work that I was doing and start this work, was I fundamentally believe, majority of us, 7 billion of us are operating from that unconscious state of fear. And you talked about feeling. If people felt fear, it would be a good thing. Oftentimes we numb ourselves. We don't even feel it, but we operate closed. We are closed to what's happening, right? We did this exercise. We did this study for most, we looked at leaders, and what we found was we are so much in the grip of the sympathetic, the fight, flight, freeze system. We can measure it. We can know it. Today with technology, smartwatches, Aura rings, Go get an instrument and look at your sympathetic to parasympathetic system activation. And for many of us, we'll find we're at 70, 80, 90% stress all the time. We're running around activated, triggered on adrenaline and cortisol running through our bodies, corrosive chemicals operating out of that in a mixture of caffeine and adrenaline, and we get through our days and then we end the day exhausted because our bodies can't take it, right? And we don't even know it. We think it's normal to operate that way. And the power of the breath can be one of the simplest way, number one, to just bring awareness to what I'm feeling. And then from that place, start to shift and choose our pathway to rewire away from that.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? Fear. Fear is the problem. And we don't feel it. And we don't recognize that that's what it is. I think for many people, except for maybe those who are struggling with anxiety, would not pinpoint it is fear that I am feeling. It would be more of, I'm not good enough. I might get fired. I feel overwhelmed. I've got to have my cup of coffee and then my energy drink and then my whatever so that I can get through this day. That is normal. That is a normal day for every single day.
And and at what cost we pay, Linda, for it, right? If I ask most people, I said, listen, what do you care about more, your work or your family?
They would say family, but their time would say work.
Their time would say work, but it's more than that. Yes, they spend most of the time at work. But what's sad for me is if we are operating in the way that we just described, and even if you showed up home at 6, where's your energy?
I used it all up.
They've used it all up, right? And so for those moments, those precious, 5 days, 6 days, those moments when we really want to be there and give and connect to our kids, to our spouses, we don't have it. We are in such energy deficit. And that's what's sad. We go through years, days, weeks, months, years, and we miss our life.
That's
miss our lives.
I'm thinking again about your comment that we live in our fight or flight. We live in that sympathetic. Many people, and you said 70% and above, that is where we are in that state. And I'm sure you're aware because you've read a gazillion books, but that to me, that I describe that as it's not only my safe, trying to be safe, but it's also my turbo boost. That this is a system designed to help me get through something hard. And it gets that extra energy by diverting energy away from other systems, like my digestive system, my immune system, some very basic things. So our bodies cannot heal when we are in a constant state of stress.
Yes.
And we have eating issues, we have digestive issues, we have problems. We don't feel good. And so then it compounds. I'm stressed. I don't have any energy. And now I don't feel good. And so it just compounds and makes me feel even more overwhelmed. And like you said, those precious moments with family, now I don't feel good. And usually when we don't feel good, we're not our nicest kind of self, the one that other people want to be around.
Yeah, exactly. And we do one of two things, right? We either react, like come home and there's a little Lego truck or something, and I put my foot on it. I'm like, why the hell is this doing here? Because we're like literally so, like our systems are so overloaded. Or what many other do, we have learned really well to numb ourselves because we don't want to feel that discomfort. So we numb with food, we numb with alcohol, we numb with sex, we numb with choose it, right? We numb. But guess what happens when we numb?
You're numb.
You're numb. You're numb to pain, discomfort, but you're also numb to joy.
That is a big deal that people often don't recognize.
Yeah.
We don't want to be numb to the good stuff. If it would be nice if we could selectively numb all the negative and just feel great, but it doesn't work that way.
It does not. In fact, the other most common thing I find people numbing with is work. So they say, I have so much work, but in reality, in certain ways, they are working, hustling for worth, because if they didn't work, they'd have to accost and check in with all the issues that they have. So I'd rather do something, right? And so learn like, really, do you have that much work, or are you wanting there to be so much work?
Wow, that's going to be a mind bender for many people because that goes back to at the very beginning. What is it that we need in order to be successful? I gotta be driven. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go. And so then you feel like, but that's where it's at. And so it takes a little mind shift to be able to say, actually, part of what you're doing is trying to numb maybe some of those feelings of I'm not good enough by through the work. And that's a very socially acceptable numbing practice.
Oh, absolutely. You just say, oh, he works so hard. Look at how driven or he is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. But in reality, if you look deep, 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 no surprise, I read this book by Bronnie Ware. She was a palliative nurse. And it really touched my heart. She identified these 5 regrets of the dying. And every time it made a big impact on me, and I shared them with so many people to say, hey, listen, we can learn from others. These are the most common regrets that show up. And they were, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had lived a life true to myself versus what others expected of me. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I had let myself be happier. And then the 5th was something around, I wish I had the courage to truly express what I felt.
Wow.
Right? Think about that. For so many of us, we'll have those regrets. We can choose a different path. We can choose a different path.
We can.
Let's have different regrets, not these,
I loved the thing about the happiness, the word that caught my mind was allow. I wish I had allowed myself to be happier.
Yes. Happiness is a choice. Happiness for me is a choice. It's a choice we can make. We do not control what happens to us.
No.
We do not control the obstacles, the sufferings. We do not, and we can, by the way, not hold on to happiness as an emotion, right? Like every emotion, it's going to rise and fall. Joy as an emotion will rise and fall. But we absolutely can choose to meet whatever life gives us from a state of joyfulness, from a state of joyfulness, from a state of spaciousness, from a state of equanimity, truly accepting what is happening and saying, I didn't choose this to happen to me, but I can choose what to make of it.
Absolutely.
What step to take next. By the way, we don't have a choice whether to take this next step or not. What we do with that attitude, if we do it with that attitude of I can choose what to make of it and I truly accept it, is we just get rid of all that emotional drama. Why did this happen to me? Oh, poor me. There is nothing. No, we always choose to move on. We just get rid of all that baggage and all that, all that up and down.
And that helps to lighten your load because when we feel overwhelmed,
Absolutely.
and sometimes we say, I have a lot on my plate. That's a common phrase. And there's no real plate. We all know that. But we're not only carrying what I have right now, but I'm also carrying or can carry the things that I in the past. Maybe I was hurt. Maybe something happened to me. Maybe I had trauma. Maybe I messed up. I mean, it could be a thousand things. And we also have the future. What
Yes.
about tomorrow? And what about this that could happen? And what about this? And what do I need to take care of so that I mean, when we're carrying our whole life, all of our past, all of our present, all of our future, it is overwhelming. And
Yes.
if we can get it into that present and shake off the other, it's not so heavy.
Yeah.
And if I can put my mind where my body is, right here, right now, it's small, it's doable. And what I love about what you've taught us, I mean, so many things, but when we say, okay, we got to learn, we got to do, the doing that you told us was 6 breaths, 1 minute,
That's it.
1 minute. And that feels doable. And if I can start, sometimes it's just if I can just start, then I can take the next step. But sometimes that fear of that first step can be so overwhelming, we take 0 steps or maybe even a step back
Yeah.
just to be safe. But if my step is 1 minute, 6 breaths, I can do that.
And that's what we ended up creating, Linda. So there's 32 of these simple things that people can try and choose one at a time. We literally saw 9 Sunflower, the way we run these programs. We choose one area, let's say self-awareness. We'll give one practice, and the whole month, the invitation is for people to just do that one thing 5 minutes a day. Sometimes you break it 1 minutes, sometimes it's 5 minutes, and you just do that. At the end of the month or at the end of 2 weeks, depending on how we're running the program, you get a chance to reflect. Did it work for you? What emerged? If it didn't work for you, nothing happened, it didn't fit into your schedule, no worries. Let's look at the next one. Let's look at the next one. Let's look at the next one. And over that period of the journey, if we choose, it's not about what I am sharing with others. It's about what we do. It's our action, our choice. What we become, what we practice. So if we practice, we can pick up 3, 5, 6, you choose it. 5-minute practices that become our part of our mental fitness regimen, our practices that help us evolve our consciousness, rewire our brains away from fear towards joy, which is our base state. We're reprogramming back to our base state, which is that of joy. So we don't need to find joy out there. It already is here. We can choose it. We just have to rewire this. We have to rewire the illusion.
Rewire the illusion. Ooh, that's even better. So now I'm not rewiring reality and I'm not doing something hard. I am literally rewiring my brain.
Yes.
Through these 1 minute practices.
Yeah.
And up to 5 minutes in a day, in a whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels doable. And I love that because that gives me hope. And that makes all the difference and helps encourage somebody to take that first step, which is what we require to make those changes.
That's it. And do it together with others, right? Do it with families, do it with friends. So we get the support.
I love that. Oh, Ashish, this is amazing. Is there anything you want to make sure we cover before we close today?
No, look, I think for me, this is work. I go back to learning, doing, teaching. I think we need this. Look, look at the way we are in the US right now. We're number 1 in GDP. We're number 23 in life satisfaction. First time we dropped below top 20 in the global happiness research report that Gallup publishes. You know what breaks my heart, Linda, is that life satisfaction number for young adults. I think we're number 63 or 62. I don't exactly remember right now. Think about that.
Wow.
Number 63. The ways in which we are operating and working is causing so much harm. Teenage suicide is on the rise. For the first time ever, mental health for younger adults is worse than it has ever been. In fact, the happiness used to be an inverted curve. We were pretty happy as children. And then, 30s and 40s were kind of the low years of happiness. And then it started to come back up again in 50s and 60s. Well, our younger adults, our kids are worse. And so we need to do this work, dear friends, not just for our own happiness and to be happier. We need to do this because without this, we're not going to create a world. We are creating a world that is inhospitable for our kids because we're taking actions out of fear. We're taking actions out of scarcity. And I think if we don't do it, I think we leave our planet much worse off. And I think it's an obligation for all of us to not just know about this work, but to really practice, take the action, take the steps. And I know that's what you're trying to do with the beautiful foundation that you've created. That's what we are trying to do. But all you and I can do is provide the resources, Linda. The invitation is for people to start practicing because that's what will change the world, not talking about it.
Isn't that the truth? There are some things in life that we can do for other people. I can bring you a glass of water if you're thirsty, Ashish. I can do that, but I cannot drink it for you.
Yeah.
And so similarly, here we have this opportunity. We can talk about it. We can share. But until people take it and accept that invitation and do something, we cannot do it for them. I can't save anyone, which is frustrating. And in some ways, when you recognize and accept that, it's a little bit freeing in that people get to choose their own, and I don't have to carry more burdens of other people's choices. But dang it, I am going to extend that invitation and talk about it and say, here, we want you to have hope that there is something you can do about it that works so you can be happy. Because we have tried it. We have done the me search. I've done me search. Ashish has done me search. And we share our experience, our witness, that it works. We don't have to live in fear. We can live in happiness and peace and joy and fulfillment. Join us. The water's fine. Come in.
Yes.
Thank you, Ashish. Appreciate you so much.
You too, my dear friend. Thank you for all the beautiful work you're doing.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by author Rick Hansen. He said, "Neurons that fire together wire together. Mental states become neural traits. Day after day, your mind is building your brain. This is what scientists call experience-dependent neuroplasticity. Today, I invite our listeners to hardwire our brains for happiness." See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the free stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.